that the Speaker is unavoidably absent. Therefore, in accordance with the statutes, I would ask the Deputy Speaker to please take the chair.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. Routine proceedings. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Member for St. John's.
I move, seconded by the member for Concordia, that Bill number 218, an act respecting the title of Associate Judge, various acts amended, be now read a first time. Thank you.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for St. John's, seconded by the Honourable Member for Concordia, that Bill 218, an act respecting the title Associate Judge, be now read a first time. The Honourable Member for St. John's.
I'm proud to stand in the House and introduce Bill 218, an act respecting the title Associate Judge, various acts amendment. This bill amends the Court of King's Bench Act to change the title of the judicial officials from Master to Associate Judge. This is an important change due to the history, the word master, and its connotations that it draws with slavery. This bill takes an important step forward, ensuring that the language used in our institutions reflects the values of today. Miigwech.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. No other bills. Committee reports. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the second report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Your Standing Committee on Social
Dispense.
and Economic.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Dauphin, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for La Vérendrye, seconded by the Honourable Member for Dauphin, that the second report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. Tabling of reports. Ministerial statements. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, can you canvass the House for leave to allow a ministerial statement on World AIDS Day and a ministerial statement for International Day of Persons with Disabilities?
Is there leave of the House to allow for a ministerial statement on World AIDS Day and another ministerial statement on International Day of Persons with Disabilities? Is there leave? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As the Minister of Families and the Minister responsible for accessibility, I'm pleased to proclaim December 3rd as International Day of Persons with Disabilities in Manitoba. In 1992, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the observance of December 3rd as International Day of Disabled Persons. The goal is to promote an understanding of disability issues and to mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities. While Manitoba has celebrated the International Day of Persons with Disabilities for over a decade, this year the province has officially proclaimed it in perpetuity. Manitoba continuously strives to ensure that all individuals with disability are able to access the services they need by removing barriers and supporting a skilled and committed frontline direct service workforce. The province has taken steps to stabilize this important workforce in recent months. In March 2022, Manitoba issued a one-time labor force support grant to Community Living Disability Services for provider recruitment and retention activities. Additionally, in this year's budget, our government invested $10 million in new funding to increase wages paid to direct service workers who deliver residential services in community. We recognize that more needs to be done and that this was an initial first step. To support children accessing the Children's Disability Services Program and their families, $5 million in new funding was provided to reduce waitlists for much-needed therapies and case management services. We also established a brand new $8 million bridge program for children and youth with disabilities so that their families can care for children with complex needs and give them the option of accessing longer-term out-of-home supports. These are just a few of the initial investments our government has made in recent months to support people living with disabilities, and our commitment is to continue ensuring that all Manitobans can achieve a high quality of life in our province. This year, our government also launched the inaugural Manitoba Accessibility Fund, and its tremendous success demonstrates the desire from the community to ensure a welcoming environment for all people of all abilities. I was honored to award 30 different organizations a total of $756,000 towards accessibility. It is important to mark December 3rd as a day to acknowledge the vital contributions Manitobans with disabilities make in our personal lives, to our workforce, our economy, and our community. This year, the Manitoba Accessibility Office will be hosting a virtual event. Keynote speakers and a panel of guests will be discussing the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and how it's impacted their own lives. It is through these initiatives and many more that we are striving to make Manitoba the most accessible province to live and work in. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This Saturday, December 3rd, will be the International Day of Persons with Disability. This day of recognition was first observed internationally in 1992, and the day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities at every level of society and development. It is important we continue to advocate on behalf of the rights of people with disabilities so they can participate fully, equally, and effectively in our society. In Manitoba, there are over 200,000 Manitobans living with a disability, many living productive, healthy, and meaningful lives in all sectors of our society. Evidence and experience shows that when barriers to inclusion are removed and persons with disabilities are empowered to participate fully in societal life, the entire community benefits. There are still barriers and stigma for persons with disabilities. For example, the current employment rate for persons with disability in Canada is only 17.9%. However, once hired, they have a retention rate of 72%. Studies have shown that 90% of people with disabilities can work just as productively or even more so than their colleagues. In the spirit of this day, we must also recognize that we can do and should do better for persons with disabilities so that everyone can live in an accessible and equitable world. I want to give a shout out to organizations such as the Society of Manitoba with Manitobans with Disability, who do incredible work every single day to make sure these rights are not forgotten and that individuals with disabilities can live their lives they want. It is important to recognize employers that ensure that persons with disabilities are provided inclusive and supported workplace. The Manitoba NDP would also like to recognize and honor all persons with disabilities for their resilience as they continue to contribute to our society in incredible ways, despite the barriers, struggles that they may face. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I ask leave to respond to the minister's statement.
Is there leave for the member for River Heights to respond to the minister's statement? Agreed and so ordered. The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, we spend far too much time emphasizing the disability, and we need to spend more time talking about the amazing things that people with physical, mental, or brain disabilities are doing. A friend of mine is in a wheelchair. on a respirator, is married, and is holding down a full-time job. She's an incredible example of what is possible. Too often, when we think of disabilities, we don't pay enough attention to those with mental or brain health conditions. After all, learning disabilities are one of the most common disabilities, indeed, perhaps the most common disability. People who are neurodivergent, who have a learning disability, ADHD, autism, or FASD, are too often stigmatized and not giving the help they need. At a recent forum I held on neurodiversity, the mother of a 19-year-old son told the story of how her son, with a learning disability, an executive function disability, who had supports as a child, was no longer provided any government support when he turned 18. Without any help, he is almost certainly homeless. His parents are going to incredible lengths to help him, but it is exhausting. Indeed, at the forum, the room was full of exhausted parents. The province needs to do better. There are too many who are neurodivergent, who are struggling, homeless, and having great difficulty. Recently, the government announced the backlog of FASD assessments would be cleared up in 18 months. This is an extraordinarily long time for a child with FASD. It's unacceptable that some children will have to wait 18 months. It's horrible. It's unimaginable that the wait is as long as 18 months. We must do much better. Indeed, I recommend all members read a book on the power of neurodiversity. There is incredible potential out there if we can help those individuals who are neurodiverse and who are neurodivergent. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise today in the House to recognize that December 1st is World AIDS Day. This is the 34th year since its inception in 1988 that we take time to unite in the fight against HIV/AIDS and honor victims of this life-altering disease. I also encourage Manitobans to take part in the Rock the Ribbon campaign by wearing a red ribbon in honor of patients and victims worldwide. Although this disease was only discovered in 1984, it has made a lasting impact on the lives of 38 million people in the world today. In Manitoba, there are roughly 1,400 people living with HIV/AIDS. Here in Manitoba, our government has taken action by broadening access to treatment, including adding pre-exposure prophylactic, or PrEP, to the provincial pharmacare formulary. PrEP helps prevent the contracting of HIV. Additionally, our government has invested $2.3 million for an Indigenous-led sexually transmitted blood-borne infections testing and contact tracing strategy. We are also investing $632,000 over the next 2 years to strengthen HIV/AIDS services in areas most affected by case increases. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is important to also recognize the effects here in Manitoba that contribute to our HIV rates: substance use, homelessness, and other challenges. We will address these impacts by providing treatment as prevention, enhancing primary care capacity and prevention, continuing with harm reduction efforts, and providing resources and supports for people living with HIV who are experiencing homelessness. We value the health partnerships that has been established with Kanichak so that we can ensure Indigenous-led approaches are used for care. There is more work to be done. Together, we can raise awareness and provide treatment for patients around the world. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Today is World AIDS Day, a day when we recognize those in our province living with HIV and AIDS and reiterate our support for them as they seek to live their lives to the fullest. World AIDS Day is an important reminder to end the stigma that those living with HIV and AIDS experience. Advancements in treatment have drastically improved the length and quality of life for those living with HIV and AIDS. but there's still more work that can be done to ensure they have access to the quality health care they deserve. Unfortunately, we have been seeing a large increase of new HIV cases in the province recently. More than 200 people were diagnosed in the last 4 quarters alone. That is twice the number of diagnoses we saw a few years ago. We know that there are measures this government could be taking that would help reduce the number of HIV diagnoses in Manitoba. They could support supervised consumption sites, which reduce bloodborne illnesses. Supervised consumption sites save lives, and it's time for the government to step up and commit to supporting supervised consumption sites in Manitoba. While the PC government has been refusing to support these measures that would reduce the number of HIV diagnoses and save lives, organizations on the ground continue to do the work for them by providing Manitobans with the treatment and support they need and deserve. In particular, I would like to highlight the work of the Manitoba Harm Reduction Network and the 9 Circles Community Health Centre, which provides culturally appropriate care, treatment, support, and advocacy for those living and affected with HIV. Your work is appreciated by the Manitoba NDP and all Manitobans, quite frankly, and we will continue to stand with you and all those living with HIV and AIDS across our province. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I ask for leave to speak to the minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to speak to the minister's statement? Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a sad testament to the failure of the provincial government to do an adequate job to prevent HIV/AIDS in Manitoba when the number of people with HIV/AIDS is going up and not down. Indeed, 2021 saw an incredible and very distressing 44% increase in HIV cases from 116 in 2020 to 167 in 2021. This is a preventable condition. Indeed, a major report released today talks of the dangerous inequalities in societies like ours with rising rates of HIV/AIDS. The report headlines the fact that inequalities are stopping the world from ending AIDS. It is an embarrassment that Manitoba, which has the International Centre for Human and Animal Health in Winnipeg, with world experts here on HIV/AIDS, is doing so poorly. It is true that under the NDP, the province was very slow to bring in the latest approaches to HIV/AIDS prevention. The PCs have made some changes, including making PrEP available. That is good, but they are not yet enough, and their overall record during the last 6.5 years is poor. Manitobans deserve much better, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On World AIDS Day today, let us aim for better in the next year.
Member statements. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm honored to acknowledge community member Justine Prue. Justine has been using her amazing artistic abilities to bring stunning painted murals to the halls of schools in my constituency. These murals depict the 7 sacred teachings, truth and reconciliation, diversity, and include Indigenous symbols and imagery done in Justine's style of bold colors and lines, which are her interpretation of the woodland art style. As a Métis artist who also has Cree and Ojibwe ancestry, Justine says being able to create and share her art has been incredibly meaningful. Justine shared it is important to bring Indigenous culture to places where it previously wasn't visible or allowed. She said, by putting that culture back into schools, it's doing a lot of healing. She has received feedback from students of how impactful her art has been. Louis Riel Arts and Technology Center principal Brian Cameron says Justine's murals in his school have created a much more vibrant environment, bringing color and meaning into what were previously bland spaces. Graduating as a hairstylist from ATC, Justine eventually pursued a career as a tattoo artist. During the pandemic, when business slowed, she completed a mural in her mother's Indigenous Studies classroom at Miles Macdonald Collegiate. This led to more painting opportunities, and she has since completed more than a dozen murals, including recently at Ecole Howden in Windsor Park. There were times when people tried to discourage Justine from pursuing careers based in art. She wants to encourage and empower young Indigenous people to pursue their passions and not be dissuaded by others' opinions or negativity. Congratulations on your well-deserved success, Justine, and thank you for making a positive contribution for the students and schools in our communities. Thank you.
Before proceeding with the next private member statement, I wish to draw the attention of all members to the public gallery, where we have seated 20 grade 9 students from River East Collegiate under the direction of Mr. Cochrane. This group is located in the constituency of the Honourable Member for Rossmere. That's me. We welcome you to the Manitoba Legislature. The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Deputy Speaker, I'm honored to rise as the member for Union Station to talk about how PC cuts to healthcare have caused devastation. The Premier would have us believe private care is the solve to public health services that she's tried to dissolve. They cut ERs, fired nurses, cut cancer care, and more. But they were just getting started and now have even more in store. Union Station constituents tell me how these cuts have hurt. They see clearly the BCs are putting people last and putting profits first. My constituents want to see health inequities in Manitoba addressed, not cuts and nurses forced from public hospitals, which creates much more health system stress. Public health care is a Canadian value, which should be defended by all in this space, not undermined by the Minister of Health when she stands up in her place. Communities I represent, and all of us do as well, have much to say about the PC's failed approach and the stories they do tell. From broken home care, which is being ignored by the new minister assigned, to no action on supervised consumption sites of which science is aligned. So to the constituents of Union Station and all those across our province, I assure you this. Our NDP team stands with your communities, seniors, families, and your kids. We will work alongside healthcare workers, nurses, professionals, and doctors alike. We will treat them with respect, not like the PCs who just pick fights. We will fill vacancies, build capacity, and make public health care strong, because we all know what the PCs have done to healthcare in Manitoba is just plain wrong. So trust the NDP is working hard, and with you, we're unified. And in 2023, together, we'll make sure our NDP caucus sits on that side.
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge and honour an exemplary educator from Fort Richmond Collegiate, Ms. Becky Thiessen. Ms. Thiessen has developed the choir programs at FRC and reached a level that is recognized locally and across the country as top-notch. She has found the secret to getting the best out of her students and consistently shows a level of patience that can only be achieved with a heart of gold. Mr. Deputy Speaker, music is an integral part of the fabric of every culture around the globe and is used for celebrations as well as to lighten moods. Some people are gifted with a natural talent for singing, while some require a little bit of work to develop their vocal instrument. Ms. Thiessen has been a wonderful leader in the music program at FRC and has been instrumental in building on her students' natural talents. She has helped many find their voice in order to gift others with beautiful harmonies, as was demonstrated earlier today in the Legislative Building. Ms. Thiessen's positive influence is not limited to the music that she weaves through each student's heart, but it also extends beyond the school day with genuine connections she makes with every member. She may not be aware of it, but her actions and care have changed the trajectory and the outlook on life for many youth that she has taught, and for that I am personally grateful. I would like to share a couple of comments from her students. Hark said, "I feel as though choir isn't just a gathering. It's another place that I would call home." Daniel shared, "Miss Thiessen always makes me want to become a better version of myself. She teaches with such passion and fire, and I feel it." Cody commented, "Miss Thiessen makes me feel like I have a place, somewhere I can be myself." It is fitting, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this talented and very loved educator will be receiving the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal later today for her invaluable contributions to the youth in Fort Richmond. Joining me here today in the gallery are Ms. Becky Thiessen and the Vox Anima Chamber Choir. And I ask my colleagues in the chamber to join me today in thanking and honoring Ms. Becky Thiessen.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was wondering if you could ask for leave of the House to allow the Vox Anima Chamber Choir to give a little taste of what they had performed earlier today in the Legislature.
Okay, is there leave? Is there leave? Agreed and so ordered. Order. Someone else going to ask leave for another one, or no? The Honourable Member for Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. First of all, thank you. Wow, that's amazing. I stand today to acknowledge elementary school teacher Sherry Porth and her grade 7 and 8 class at Juniper Elementary School in Thompson, who received the Peter Henderson Bryce Award. This award is given out to this award is given out by First Nation Child and Family Caring Society. It was given to Ms. Porth and her class because of their collective advocacy for bringing awareness to MMIW G2S. This award is named after Peter Henderson Bryce, a public health physician in Canada from the late 18 to 1900s, for his advocacy for the proper treatment of Indigenous children in residential schools. In Porth's words, Henderson Bryce was brave enough to step up when no one else was. While Porth's teaching career spans 14 years, she admits that she still has more learning to do about Canada's history. When she learns it, she teaches her students and passes that on. This passion for education and social justice is the driving force which led her students to learn the histories of residential school, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people, Orange Shirt Day, The Secret Path, and the Downey Windjack Fund, and the 60 Scoop. Porth, like many other educators, see the necessity of educating youth and future leaders about these dark parts of Canadian history. The truth is what's important. and through understanding of these harms that were done is essential for reconciliation with Indigenous communities. Porth ensures her class participates in events such as Orange Shirt Day, the Windjack Walk, tying ribbons to the Miles Hart Bridge for MMIW G2S. She also facilitates the hard discussions that foster a deeper understanding of these topics. The award comes with a $500 prize, and the class is collaboratively deciding where the money should be spent. Unfortunately, the class was not able to attend in the gallery today, but please join me in congratulating them as they view us live stream via Thompson.
The honourable member for River Heights.
I rise today to speak of Rhonda Nickel, a nurse who has dedicated much of her life to serving and helping others. She worked diligently for 29 years at the Grace Hospital in various areas, including the emergency room, in oncology, and in surgery. She's also worked as a clinical education facilitator with the U of M to share her passion for nursing with third-year students. She carries her commitment to helping others in her current role in clinical trials and research. She understands the importance of constantly working to find new and better ways to care for patients, and to be doing this through carefully planned research. Rhonda was integral in the implementation of the use of micro-introducers and ultrasound for PIC insertions at the Grace. She organized a better process for ordering supplies from vendors. She was involved in the WRHA logistic group to find better, more cost-effective alternatives for medical products. She has a broad and in-depth understanding of our healthcare system and the changes needed. I can already tell in conversation with her that there are reasons why the PC's approach to healthcare is not getting the results we need. As a physician and MLA, I see firsthand how critical it is to have Rhonda, with her more than 3 decades experience as a nurse, as an important voice in the Manitoba Legislature. With her in-depth knowledge of healthcare, we have the best chance of seeing improvements for Manitoba. The government's plan for healthcare is not working well. The NDP revealed their plan yesterday, and I quote, "We have a plan. It's to not cut healthcare. But there's much more to do than this. We need the insight of individuals like Rhonda Nickel. I hope all MLAs will support a better approach to healthcare and support the election of Rhonda Nickel in the by-election on December 13th.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Huge shout out to the FRC Chamber Choir and Mrs. Thiessen. That was amazing. And certainly a lot more pleasing to the ear than some of the discord that you'll hear in the chamber.
Order.
Especially when they hear those PC talking points. Manitobans now know that the PCs plan to privatize Manitoba Hydro. They're looking at the subsidiaries and, quote, they've directed Hydro to look at those subsidiaries, to consider them for sale or shut them down. Those are the government's own words. We say that breaking up and selling off pieces of Hydro is wrong because it will cost you more money. Will the Premier tell the House which parts of Hydro she plans to break up and sell off?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I just want to thank Ms. Thiessen and the FRC Chamber Choir. All of you, it was so wonderful to have you sing in the chamber today. That might be almost precedent-setting for a choir to be singing in this chamber, and so that is so exciting. You can take that away with you. You're setting history right here in the province of Manitoba, so thank you so much. You are amazing. And as for the question from the Leader of the Opposition, we're not selling Manitoba Hydro, we're saving it from the NDP ruin.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a follow-up question.
Well, it seems that the Premier isn't singing from the same songbook as her Minister of Finance, because yesterday he tabled a document that says that the PCs plan to break up Manitoba Hydro and sell it off. We already know that they started their privatization plan when they sold off Eshmont. So the question remains, which subsidiary are they looking to sell off now? Perhaps they'll be looking at Manitoba Hydro International further. We don't know, for example, what will take place with Hydro's Power System Technology Center. We also know that MHI owns valuable intellectual property like the PSCAD software. Are these valuable assets things that the PCs now want to sell off? Will the Premier just tell the House today which part of Manitoba Hydro is she planning to sell off first?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the fact of the matter is the NDP ran hydro into the ground, and we are stabilizing the finances of Manitoba Hydro while also keeping rates low for Manitobans. That is what our plan is. We just announced, and I want to thank the Minister of Finance and Manitoba Hydro as well, the Minister of Finance, and we announced just the other day that we're reducing by half the fees, the guarantee rate fees and the water rate fees in the province of Manitoba to Manitoba Hydro. That will go back into Manitoba Hydro, which again stabilizes the finances of Manitoba Hydro while also keeps rates low. That is the responsible approach. The NDP's approach, I'll let you know in a moment what others say about that.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Their plan is to keep raising hydro rates, as they've been doing for their whole time in office, and as they've now announced they plan to do for the next 19 years. On this side of the House, we want to freeze your hydro rates. But the part that they, up till yesterday, weren't saying out loud is that they also want to privatize Manitoba Hydro. I'll table the government document that they produced that says they want to look at Manitoba Hydro subsidiaries and that they should be considered for sale or shut down. Privatization of hydro assets is wrong because it's going to cost you more money. Will the Premier just provide more detail on those plans and tell us which Manitoba Hydro asset she plans to sell off next?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition and the NDP's plan is to destabilize the financial situation of Manitoba Hydro. We've seen that happen in the past, and we know that is their plan in the future, and that does not help Manitobans. So I want to quote Edward Kennedy, the chair of the board of Manitoba Hydro, who said about the Leader of the Opposition's plan, Mr. Deputy Speaker. He says, to say we're going to have zeros across the board, that doesn't reflect the reality of all the things that are going on in energy today. Mr. Deputy Speaker, their plan will not produce a stable Manitoba Hydro for the future generations of our province. Our plan will.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
The Premier dodges the question and refuses to tell Manitobans which part of hydro she plans to sell off next. We do know, though, that she also has privatization ambitions in the healthcare system. In 2018, we warned that their cuts to emergency rooms was going to lead to fewer beds in our hospital system. Of course, Brian Pallister at the time said you didn't need hospital beds in order to deliver quality care. Nobody quite understood what he meant by that. I'll table the transcript. However, that notwithstanding, this Premier decided to implement that hospital plan full steam ahead. Will she finally recognize that their cuts to health care have caused chaos in our health care system and that they've been wrong the whole time?
The Honourable First Minister.
Wrong is putting ideology before patient care, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I can tell you, we on this side of the House will not do that. We will always put patient care first. And that's why I want to thank our surgical and diagnostic task force for all the incredible work that they're doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The pandemic backlog for cataract surgery has now been fully eliminated. Ultrasounds from almost 4,500 procedures to under 2,000 procedures. And the backlog for orthopedic knee replacements has been reduced by 27%. That is putting patient care first.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a follow-up.
We know that privatizing healthcare leads to worse outcomes for patients. We're already seeing it when it comes to patient transport teams. I'll table a brand new letter written by respiratory therapists and primary care paramedics who are responsible for transfers from ICUs, emergency rooms, and urgent cares in our province. They say that the approach that this government is taking is wrong, that they feel as though they're left behind, and they've never gotten a fair deal from this Premier or from the PCs. Will the Premier simply tell the House why her government has for so long ignored the work of rural paramedics and medical transfer teams?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And speaking of denying access to health care for Manitobans, 12,000 Manitobans received surgical care in private facilities in Manitoba, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Those are 12,000 individuals in Manitoba over the last 2 years that the NDP would deny access to health care because of their ideology. We will always put patient care first over ideology.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Their privatization ideology is what is responsible for long rural EMS wait times right now. They're talking about press releases and imaginary programs in the future. We're talking about rural Manitobans who were waiting for ambulances right now in this province. That letter was signed by 16 respiratory therapists and primary care paramedics. They complain time and time again that this government has left them behind and never provided them with a fair deal. We see the impact now with burnouts and long waits for ambulances across rural Manitoba. Will the Premier finally stop ignoring allied healthcare professionals?
The Honourable First Minister.
You're just making stuff up.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the only party that would deny access to healthcare services in the province of Manitoba is the Leader of the Opposition and the NDP, and maybe the Liberals too, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But what I would say is that there's 13,000 individuals in Manitoba right now that have surgical procedures that are scheduled in the next 6 months in private delivery services here in Manitoba within that single payer system, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And 13,000 Manitobans, those are individuals that are waiting for those surgical procedures that would be denied by the Leader of the Opposition and every member opposite, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We will always put patient care first.
Order. 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 Order, please. The Honourable Member for St. James.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mislead and hide. That's what Conservatives do when confronted with their plans for privatization. Yet here it is in black and white. Their response to the Brad Wall report outlines the PC government's plans for Manitoba Hydro, quote, if these subsidiaries are not core to Manitoba Hydro's mission, then they should be considered for sale or shutdown, end of quote. Why is the minister planning to sell off parts of Manitoba Hydro?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I'm pleased to have a question from the member. He's been relegated so far to the back of the lineup they had to summon him from the parking lot. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can see that the NDP misinformation and distortion campaign is in full gear with a member for St. James cranking away on the machine. The facts are this. Manitoba Hydro isn't for sale. We're stabilizing Hydro where the NDP threatened it.
The Honourable Member for St. James on a follow-up.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, here's the actual facts. Manitoba Hydro and its subsidiaries are profitable. They keep good jobs in Manitoba, and they give us our Manitoba advantage. Cutting up Manitoba Hydro and selling off its subsidiaries undermines Hydro, it hurts our future, it hurts our economy, and it will reduce Hydro profitability, which means even higher Hydro rates for Manitobans. Why is the minister committed to breaking up and selling off pieces of Hydro?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it doesn't matter how many times he puts misinformation on the record, Manitoba Hydro is not for sale. However, what the report yesterday did actually focus on, and what that member is trying to skirt and go around at high speed, is the fact that this report responds to billions of dollars of over-expenditure by an NDP former government that mismanaged, that hid from Manitobans, and that went around the very processes that were designed to protect the interests of ratepayers. So shame on them, and of course they want to avoid what's really in that report. We will continue to stand up for lower rates for Manitobans and a strong and stable, publicly owned Manitoba Hydro.
The Honourable Member for St. James on a final supplementary.
The minister can spin it however he wants. The reality is yesterday his government put out a report that said in no uncertain terms they plan on selling off Hydro subsidiaries. The PC government's own response makes it clear for anyone to see. There's no denying it anymore. They want to break up Manitoba Hydro and sell off or shut down more of its subsidiaries. This makes no sense. These subsidiaries bring good jobs to Manitoba, and they've helped to grow our economy. They've generated significant profits for Manitoba Hydro, which have helped to keep our rates lower. Why is this minister and this government so obsessed with privatization, and why is he so eager to sell off and shut down Manitoba Hydro subsidiaries?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
That member has lost all credibility when it comes to anything having to do with rates of Hydro. He spent months and months and months telling all Manitobans that rates would go to 5%, and this week Hydro said their rate is 2%. So how does it compare? Alberta, rates up 30%. Saskatchewan, rates up 4%. Ontario, 4.3%. New Brunswick, 8.9%. And Manitoba Hydro, for the next 20 years, 2% rates, among the lowest in all of Canada. We stand for low rates and a strong and public Manitoba Hydro.
Order. The clock continues to run. The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, earlier this year we learned from a concerned citizen that a nursing manager at Grace Hospital has a personal connection with private health agency Elite IntelliCare. This agency does business with the region, providing private agency staff such as healthcare aides and nurses. Of course, nurse managers in the public system recruit and hire staff. It's really concerning that such staff would have a potential conflict. What is this minister doing to address the private conflicts of managers working at the Grace Hospital?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm disappointed that the member for Notre Dame has decided on a blame and shame narrative today, blaming and shaming health professionals. And at Grace Hospital, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I was so pleased to be able to be on site at Grace Hospital this week, talking to frontline emergency department staff, having a tour of the emergency department. We were around the table of solutions, talking about how we can work together to address the issues, not just at the Grace, but across our health system. Great ideas came forward about recruitment, retention, and training. They were very pleased to hear about our $200 million 2,000 health professionals action plan, and we'll continue to work.
The Honourable Minister's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of us members in this House have a fiduciary trust to our citizens of Manitoba, and we need to make sure that if there is conflict of interest happening, that we need to get to the bottom of that. So the minister has nurse managers currently working in the public system who have a personal connection with private health agencies. It's the job of these managers to recruit and retain healthcare workers in the public system. Instead, some have a connection to private agencies. It's a potential conflict of interest with their duties. Why is the minister allowing nurse managers to have even the appearance of conflict with private health agencies?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The hiring of individuals in the health system does not occur here at the Manitoba Legislative Building. If there is a specific incident or situation the member would like to have investigated, that can be done through the Regional Health Authority responsible for that site, or through Shared Health, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But to bring it to the floor of the Legislature is not the appropriate setting. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, $40 million went to private nurse agencies last year, and this number is growing higher this year. Yet rather than addressing this government has managers with connections to private health agencies. It directly undermines public health care and is just another example of this government's approach with private health. Will the minister intervene and ensure health managers are serving the public interest?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's not the first time members opposite have tried to litigate situations on the floor of this chamber. No. This is not the appropriate forum. If there's a specific incident or a case the member is concerned about, the member needs to approach Human Resources for the Regional Health Authority responsible. The hiring is not done here in the Manitoba Legislative Building by politicians.
Order, please.
It is done in the Regional Health Authorities, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
The PCs have failed to approve University of Manitoba's dietitian program despite having more than 5 months to review it. Not only does this negatively affect students who may have to leave the province for education or change careers, it also negatively affects our healthcare system. Dietitians do critical work to help counsel new diabetes diagnoses patients, tube feed, and so many other things. And without their help, this puts more pressure on already overworked nurses in our healthcare system. So can the minister explain why he has failed to approve U of M's dietitian program despite having more than 5 months to do so?
The Honourable Minister for Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Good to see my critic back and feeling well. I see that sincerely. Our government provides over $1 billion in post-secondary funding to support our institutions in Manitoba. We respect the institution autonomy with each institution's academic oversight body, such as the Senate at the University of Manitoba, to determine academic programs, curriculums, development, human resources, and operational needs. We know interfering in post-secondary autonomy is the NDP way, not ours, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I'm obliged just to caution the minister and all members that we are not allowed in this House to reference the absence or presence of a member. I'm sure it was an honest error, but the rules do stipulate that, and it falls to me to enforce those rules. The honourable member for St. Vital.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, dietitian students are being forced to finish their education elsewhere, out of province, or change career paths because of this minister's foot dragging. And it's entirely due to this minister's fault, and it's having impacts not only for students, but in our healthcare systems too. As of right now, there will be no more dietitian students in Manitoba as of this June, and they play a key role in our healthcare system. We're putting more pressure on nurses without dietitians. And what does this minister have to say for himself? Well, not very much. We call on the minister to actually approve the program, the new dietitian program, so we can have those students educated right here in Manitoba. Will he do that and actually approve the program in a timely manner today?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, $200 million to retain, train, and recruit healthcare professionals, over $30 million to establish 289 nursing seats, $12.5 million for the Nursing Simulation and Training Center to add 150 more nursing seats. Unlike the NDP, our government respects the institution's autonomy and believe in collaborative relationship to strengthen our post-secondary institutions in Manitoba. That is why we are investing more than $44 million in 400 additional nursing seats, $20.3 million for adult learning, $539,000 for additional veterinary seats, $480,000 for additional respiratory therapist seats, and many more invested on top of $1 billion yearly investments in operating, more to strengthen future needs, unlike the NDP, who took an ideological approach.
Shame.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital on a final supplementary.
I'd like to remind the minister we're talking about dietitian students who he's failing, if he forgot what we're actually talking about. But it's not just them, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Across the province, they've made post-secondary less affordable and accessible. That's due to their slashing of funding and their jacking up of tuition. Their plan to implement performance-based funding in post-secondary institutions has students and faculty raising alarm bells. Their formula is going to mean more cuts and even worse outcomes. Will the minister stand in the House today and confirm whether his government will implement performance-based funding, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Advanced Education, Skills and Immigration.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know the NDP loves to interfere in our post-secondary institutions' autonomy. Yeah. They neglect the calls to expand the nursing and healthcare professionals training seats during their 17 years in government, resulting in critical shortages in the healthcare sector. Manitobans know the NDP record when it comes to post-secondary institutions and healthcare. They don't want to go back to the dark days of the NDP. Our government is making record investments to fill the gaps left by the previous NDP administration. We are taking action, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Today is World AIDS Day and Aboriginal AIDS Awareness Week. It's so important to cast a light on this issue in order for us to do our part to end the stigma for those living with HIV and AIDS. Unfortunately, Manitoba has seen a very large increase in the number of new HIV cases. In the last 4 quarters, over 200 people were newly diagnosed with HIV. I hope everyone in this House can understand that that is an astronomically high number. That's double what it was just a few years ago. What is the minister doing to immediately address this?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I do want to thank the member for Union Station for the question. It gives me an opportunity to highlight what our government is doing, and we're working very closely with public health to improve the prevention and treatment of HIV and AIDS. I was pleased to sit down with our provincial chief public health officer, Dr. Rusin, who's monitoring the changes across the province, but mostly here in the city of Winnipeg. And based on discussions with him and the public health team, our government is investing $632,000 to enhance HIV/AIDS services in areas impacted by high cases, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Union Station.
It is deeply concerning. The newly released data on blood-borne infection shows a rapid rise in HIV infections. As I stated, over 200 in the last 4 quarters, and that's double the number from just a few years ago. Much more than what the minister just announced needs to be done to address this, including supervised consumption sites that we know and experts are telling us time and time again reduce the risk of blood-borne infections like HIV. When will the minister take appropriate action, provide supervised consumption sites, and reduce the growing tide of HIV infections?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Our government has also invested $2.3 million to support the development of an Indigenous-led STBBU testing and contact tracing strategy, enhancing treatment coverage for those with financial barriers as well. We are investing in programs to maximize treatment prevention and expand harm reduction strategies for those living with HIV/AIDS. And those are evidence-informed harm reduction strategies, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we will continue to work with grassroots and local organizations as well as public health.
The honourable member for Union Station on a final supplementary.
Deputy Speaker, the reporting I'm referring to also shows that in the last 4 quarters, there were also 60 diagnoses of congenital syphilis. That's up from 47 last year. Deputy Speaker, to be clear, there should be 0 cases of congenital syphilis in Manitoba. This is an entirely preventable disease with proper prenatal care provided. This issue is not under control. We have raised this issue time and time and time again in this House. We have pleaded with this government to take action. When will the minister take meaningful action to address congenital syphilis and the rising blood-borne infections here in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I agree there has been an increase in STBBI cases, not just in Manitoba, but across Canada. It's not unique to our province, but Manitoba's government has taken steps. We've increased syphilis testing in pregnant women in Manitoba. We've expanded harm reduction networks and peer advisory councils. Since 2019, we've provided over $850,000 in increased annual funding to the Manitoba Harm Reduction Network. We've increased the distribution of harm reduction supplies, including $650,000 in the WRHA alone. The member for Union Station may have missed these investments. Happy to table a report at a later date. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This morning I attended a very emotional emergency meeting at Lyons Place with staff and residents about the crisis unfolding there due to the threatened sale of the building. People are angry, fearful, and frustrated. We heard residents are facing a 10% rent hike in spring, and Lions Club is being driven into deficit and debt. Manitoba and Canada have a $400 million plus housing agreement for this very purpose. A letter from Minister Dan Val made it clear that the federal government is interested in helping the Lions, and this emergency can end the moment this government steps up with a real commitment of funds, because the sale is not yet complete. Will the government step up to help the seniors in their time of need?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And irrespective of that member's false assertions that he continues to put on the record each day he comes into this House, our government is taking the issue very seriously. We are working very diligently. It has been very difficult for the province to come into this space when we were not informed before decisions were made about the future of Lyons Place. But we are working very diligently to ensure that the residents at Lyons Place receive no rent increases.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface on a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. One resident said this is an emergency for every single one of them. This crisis was triggered when, in 2018,
Manitoba Housing stopped supporting Lions Place. And the reason Lions Place is up for sale is because as the largest building that Lions runs, it means they won't have to close or sell off other Lions facilities like their PCH, whose mortgage expires next year. All of this was built with public money, and it has always all required public support. This is a matter of political will, and if we can't provide for seniors properly, we should all ask what kind of society we're living in. On this last day of session, on behalf of the seniors of Lions Place and others facing housing insecurity, will the government do the right thing and support our seniors and Lions Club into the future?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And our government is committed to affordability and affordable housing for all seniors in the province of Manitoba. And at this time of year, in this particular moment, especially those seniors living at Lions Place, and we recognize the uncertainty and the anxiety that they're feeling, but I can assure them that our government is working diligently to ensure that they have the longevity of their housing. That is why we brought in some past measures. That is why we're going to continue working towards more affordable housing in the province of Manitoba. That is why we signed on to that national action strategy, and why last year's budget included enhanced investments for housing, and we quadrupled rent assist, something that member voted against each and every time. Shame on him.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Peter Nygaard has been an open secret in Winnipeg for decades and is now being tried for his crimes in New York, Ontario, and Quebec, but no charges have been laid in Manitoba. Winnipeg is on the map of Nygaard's sheltered training grounds, where he sexually assaulted many victims and began his human trafficking ring. Earlier this week, Manitoba Liberals held a press conference with victims of and advocates against Nygaard. We called for this government to consider the very serious damage that the lack of charges are causing to many victims. Will this government reopen the investigation and call a public inquiry into the charges against Peter Nygaard?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
I want to thank the member for the question. Of course, we and I think all Manitobans are very concerned and disturbed by the allegations against Peter Nygaard, and hearing the stories from those who've come forward to share them. I want to remind the member, of course, that prosecutions is independent, but I do believe that it's important to have a second opinion, and I've instructed the department to seek a second opinion from Crown attorneys outside the province of Manitoba, and to look to see whether or not that second opinion results in a different result on charging.
The Honourable Member for Swan River.
Go, Rick. Mr. Deputy Speaker, commercial fishing is a vital source of employment for northern and Indigenous communities, generating over $100 million annually and employing over 2,000 Manitobans. Can the Minister of Natural Resources and Northern Development explain what the government is doing to ensure Manitoba's fishing industry continues to grow?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Northern Development.
I'd like to thank the member for Swan River for that question. Our government recognizes the value and importance this industry is to northern Indigenous communities, which is why we have invested $2.5 million into eco-certifying our lakes and fisheries to ensure the industry can supply the growing demand for sustainably sourced fish for international markets. Through these efforts, I had the pleasure to announce that Cedar Lake Fishery on the Chimawauan First Nation has joined Waterhen Lake as Manitoba's second eco-certified fishery. This is an outstanding accomplishment and is why we will continue to work with partners to achieve eco-certification and sustainability so that fishers have world markets available to them for generations to come.
The Honourable Member for the Pas-Kamisak.
On Monday, I reintroduced Bill 2110, which would allow employees to take paid leave if their pregnancy or their partner's pregnancy ends in a miscarriage or a stillbirth. This was a bittersweet moment as we are proud to bring forward this important legislation again, but I'm also disappointed that I had to reintroduce this bill as the PCs did not support it last session. Thankfully, they have another chance. to do the right thing and support Bill 2110 so that Manitobans have enough time to grieve. Will the PCs commit to do so today?
The Honourable Minister for Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Having gone through a miscarriage with my lovely wife, it is a very traumatic and trying time. We recognize the impact that it has on families, and currently under the Code, Manitoba does offer various leaves that an employee may avail themselves of if they are affected by a miscarriage or stillbirth.
The Honourable Member for the Pas-Camissac.
Miscarriages and stillbirths can be very traumatizing events for hopeful parents, and having to go back to work the day immediately after only adds to this trauma. Many people can't afford to take unpaid days off work, meaning that they're having to choose between their health and their income. Bill 2110 would solve this issue by ensuring all Manitobans have access to paid days off work in the event of a miscarriage or a stillbirth. The PCs should support Bill 2110 so Manitobans can take the time off they need to grieve and recover. Will they do so today? Thank you so much.
The Honourable Minister for Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, in Manitoba, individuals may be entitled to 3 unpaid days of job-protected leave under the Code's family-related leave provisions. And if a stillbirth or miscarriage occurred after the 19th week of pregnancy, the employee is entitled to maternity leave. This also aligns with federal legislation, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for the Pas-Camissac.
No one should have to choose between their health and their income. Yet, without paid leave from work in the event of a miscarriage or stillbirth, that's exactly what many Manitobans are having to do. A lack of time to grieve and recover can compound the trauma people experience. The PCs can help solve this problem by supporting Bill 2110, which would provide all Manitobans with paid leave in case of a miscarriage or stillbirth. Will they do the right thing and support Bill 21 today? 210 today?
The Honourable Minister for Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And it does bring up a traumatic time in our family, questioning of this nature, but I do recognize that it is traumatic for all families that face these particular circumstances. And we know that in Manitoba, our definition of family members is among the broadest of all provinces, and we continue to review the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Manitoba Agriculture estimates that Manitoba lost 12,000 beef cows between January 2021 and January 2022. The department found that these losses can't be reversed without aggressive rebuilding. They found that on normal, replacement herds won't be rebuilt within 10 years. Long term, it means lower herd numbers. It means a declining industry. What is the minister doing to address any of this?
The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for finally a question in the chamber about agriculture. That's wonderful. But it does remind me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, how out of touch with reality that members opposite are. Manitobans should be very wary of their hidden agenda, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Their hidden agenda to jack up taxes and fees to drive Manitoba Hydro into the ground, to make life less affordable for Manitobans. We've been listening to Manitobans. We've been hearing loud and clear the things that they want, and that's what we put in our throne speech. Making communities safer, life more affordable, putting patients first, building stronger communities, and making Manitoba more competitive. We'll continue to work with all Manitobans, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and together we will
has expired. And I have And I have a ruling for the House. The time has expired for oral questions, and I have a ruling for the House. Following the land acknowledgement on November 23, 2022, the Honourable Member for Point Douglas raised a matter of privilege, alleging that at the end of oral questions on November 22, 2022, the Honourable Member for Midlands struck her chair with force with the intent of stopping her from speaking in the chamber. The Honourable Member for Point Douglas noted that obstructing a member from performing their duties is a violation of parliamentary privilege. The member concluded her remarks by moving that this House compel the MLA for Midland to apologise for this action, refer this matter to a committee of the House to examine whether any further sanctions are necessary for the MLA for Midland, and to examine the question of how to ensure no MLA engages in any physical acts of aggression or any other act which prevents MLAs from performing their duties. The Honourable Member for Midland spoke to the matter and apologised to the member for his actions. The Honourable Government House Leader also spoke to the matter before I took it under advisement. As members know, there are two conditions that must be satisfied in order for a matter raised to be ruled in order as a prima facie case of privilege. Was the issue raised at the earliest opportunity? And was sufficient evidence provided to support the member's claim that their privileges or the privileges of the House were breached? In her submission on this matter, the Honourable Member for Point Douglas indicated that this was her earliest opportunity to raise this matter, and I accept the member's word on that point. On the second condition of whether the member provided sufficient evidence to support a prima facie case of privilege, there are several factors to consider. Before I proceed, I must remind members that when a presiding officer considers the merits of a matter of privilege, they must be guided only by procedural considerations. Often, there are other factors and circumstances at play in these cases, but those must be set aside when considering such a matter on its procedural merits. In this case, there are certainly other circumstances related to the current matter to consider, and I'll address them later in this ruling. Clearly, the obstruction of a member from their parliamentary duties would be a violation of parliamentary privilege. All of the procedural authorities confirm this sentiment, including Bosque and Gagnon, who state on page 110 of the third edition of House of Commons Procedure and Practice, in circumstances where members claim to be physically obstructed, impeded, interfered with, or intimidated in the performance of their parliamentary functions, the Speaker is apt to find that a prima facie breach of privilege has occurred. This reference begs the question of what constitutes parliamentary functions. Well, there is no codified list to guide us here. Based on practical experience, it's reasonable to conclude that parliamentary functions would include activities in the House or in a committee, such as speaking in debate and voting. But I am not convinced that heckling should be considered a parliamentary function. It is certainly the duty and responsibility of all MLAs to represent their constituents and advocate for the issues and causes they believe in, but the most effective way to do that is by actually speaking in debate, as opposed to heckling while other members have the floor. I must also reference the apology offered by the honourable member for Midland. I appreciate that the member rose to apologize immediately after the privileged submission by the honourable member for Point Douglas, and I was satisfied that his apology was sincere and genuine. I am aware that the honourable member for Point Douglas sought more than an apology in her motion, but I must remind members that historically in this House and in all other Canadian jurisdictions, such an apology would be considered enough to conclude the matter. On page 267 of Parliamentary Privilege in Canada, 2nd edition, in the section where a member is the subject of a question of privilege, Maingo states, "An apology by the offending member will invariably close the matter without the necessity of putting the motion to a vote." This has been the practice in this House for generations, and there are many such examples in our records. In consideration of all these factors, I must rule that the honourable member for Point Douglas did not provide sufficient evidence to prove a prima facie case of privilege, and from a procedural perspective, I would rule this matter concluded. From the perspective of this House and this chamber as a workplace, I do have more to say. Members will know and understand that presiding officers do their best to improve and maintain decorum in the House. Because we all care so much about why we are here, sometimes our rhetoric becomes more intense and the level of tension in the room rises. All of this is understandable and usually manageable. On occasion, however, the tone in the room goes too far and strong words are shouted across the chamber. Far worse than that, sometimes physical actions can escalate the tension in the room. I appreciate the apology offered by the honourable member for Midland. However, the member should be aware that his action was received as a violation of personal space, and it was clearly offensive and upsetting for the honourable member for Point Douglas. I would strongly advise all members to bear in mind how your actions in this place might be received by others and govern yourselves accordingly. We can disagree with each other in this place, but we must do that respectfully, as respect should be the basis for our parliamentary democracy. There's nothing wrong with us being adversaries in this assembly. I believe that it is, in fact, quite healthy for our democracy. The problems arise when we start considering each other as enemies. I would add to this ruling that I'm aware that Madam Speaker has been considering developing a code of conduct for members of this Assembly. Given recent events in the House, I'm going to recommend to her that she initiate that project as soon as possible by convening an all-party working group to prepare a draft document for consideration by our Legislative Assembly Management Commission. I will conclude with some simple advice for all members. People watch what we do here. What we do here and what we do here matters. So while we are doing this important work, let's remember to be kind to each other. We can disagree, debate, criticize, and advocate, but if we cannot be kind in this place, how can we expect our constituents to respect us and support us? Thank you for your attention to this ruling. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
I must respectfully disagree with a lot of what you said. This is a bad decision which sets a precedent that it's okay to strike another member's chair if they are heckling. I thereby challenge your rule.
The ruling can be challenged, not debated. The ruling of the chair has been challenged. The question before the House is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? All those in favor, please say yay. Yay. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. In my opinion, the yeas have it. The Honourable Official Opposition House Leader.
A recorded vote, Deputy Speaker.
A recorded vote having been called, call in the members. Order, please. Order, please. I am calling order. This is a serious matter, and I will not have members chirping at each other during the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please rise.
Sustaining the ruling.
Sustaining the ruling
All
of the
those in
chair.
favor of sustaining.
Thank you. All those in favor of sustaining the ruling of the chair, please rise.
Honorable Mrs. Stephenson.
Honorable Mrs. Stephenson.
Honorable Mr. Gertson.
Honorable Mr. Gertson.
Honorable Mr. Reyes.
Honorable Mr. Reyes.
Honorable Mr. Cullen.
Honorable Mr. Cullen.
Honorable Mr. Friesen.
Honorable Mr. Friesen.
Honorable Miss Gordon.
Honorable Ms. Gordon.
Honorable Miss Squires.
Honorable Ms. Squires.
Honorable Mr. Uwasco.
Honorable Mr. Iwasko.
Mr. Wishart.
Mr. Wishart.
Honorable Mr. Johnson Assiniboia.
Honorable Mr. Johnson Assiniboia.
Honorable Mr. Nesbitt.
Honorable Mr. Nesbitt.
Honorable Mr. Hellower.
Honorable Mr. Helwer.
Honorable Miss Clark.
Honorable Ms. Clark.
Honorable Mrs. Guimard.
Honorable Mrs. Guimard.
Honorable Mr. Wharton.
Honorable Mr. Wharton.
Honorable Mr. Pinuk.
Honorable Mr. Pinuk.
Honorable Mr. Lajmodier.
Honorable Mr. Lejmodier.
Mr. Mikuleski.
Mr. Mikulewski.
Mr. Smook.
Mr. Smook.
Miss Morley Lecomte.
Ms. Morley Lecomte.
Mrs. Cox.
Mrs. Cox.
Mr. Khan.
Mr. Khan.
Mr. Isleifson.
Mr. Isleifson.
Mr. Teitzma.
Mr. Teitzma.
Mr. Schuler.
Mr. Schuler.
Mr. Wochuk.
Mr. Wochuk.
Mr. Ginter.
Mr. Ginter.
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin.
All those opposed to sustaining the ruling of the chair, please rise.
Mr. Canoe.
Mr. Canoe.
Mr. Altamere.
Mr. Altamere.
Mr. Weeb.
Mr. Weeb.
Emily Fontaine.
Emily Fontaine.
Emily Asaguara.
Emily Asaguara.
Mrs. Smith Point Douglas.
Mrs. Smith Point Douglas.
Mr. Vasiliv.
Mr. Vasiliv.
Mr. Moses.
Mr. Moses.
Mr. Sala.
Mr. Sala.
Emily Marcelino.
Emily Marcelino.
Ms. Naylor.
Ms. Naylor.
Emily Lindsay.
Emily Lindsay.
Ms. Laughlin.
Ms. Laughlin.
Mr. Malloway.
Mr. Malloway.
Mr. Brar.
Mr. Brar.
Mr. Bushy.
Mr. Bushy.
Mr. Redhead.
Mr. Redhead.
Mr. Sandu.
Mr. Sandu.
We will now conduct the alphabetical roll call of members participating virtually, asking each remote member to audibly state their vote, responding with either "I vote yes" or "I vote no." I would also remind members to unmute their mics only when they are recognized, and then immediately mute them again once they have declared their vote.
Mr. Lagasse.
I vote yes.
Mr. Lagasse votes yes.
Mr. Peterson.
He needs to unmute.
He's muted.
Mr. Peterson, can you please unmute?
I vote yes.
Mr. Peterson votes yes.
Honorable Mr. Smith Lajmodier.
I vote yes.
Honorable Mr. Smith Lajmodier votes yes. We just had Derek Johnson
Yes,
enter, but he can't vote. It's too late. Okay. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Going back. Okay. Thank you so much. You did a great job. Yeas 31, nays 18.
Ruling of the chair has been sustained. As the House is expected to adjourn later today for our winter break, and as Youth Parliament will be using the chamber later this month, I would encourage all honourable members to remove the contents of their desks today. I would further encourage members to recycle as much of the material as possible. The blue bins here in the chamber are designated for recycling of Hansard only. Any other material you would like to recycle can be placed in the larger recycling containers in the message rooms located just outside the chamber. Thank you. Petitions. Seeing no petitions, grievances, orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have a leave request. In accordance with Section 34 of the sessional order passed by this House on October 7th, 2020, and subsequently amended, I'm seeking leave of the House to further amend that same sessional order so that one, in the first paragraph, December 1, 2022, is replaced by June 1st, 2023, and two, Section 31 is deleted.
Is there leave to further amend the sessional order passed by this House on October 7th, 2020, and subsequently amended so that 1. In the first paragraph, December 1, 2022 is replaced by June 1, 2023, and 2. Section 31 is deleted. Is there leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I have two leave requests related to today's House business. First, could you please canvass the House for leave to allow the following bills to be considered for concurrence and third reading this afternoon? Bill 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration. Bill number 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended. And Bill 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act.
Is there leave to allow the following bills to be considered for concurrence and third reading this afternoon? Bill 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration. Bill 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended. Bill 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act. Is there leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Could you please canvass the House for leave to schedule the following items of business today at the times noted, with the understanding that the Deputy Speaker or Chairperson will be empowered to interrupt debate if necessary to put the questions without further debate at these appointed times. 1, Committee of the Whole on Bill 200 will begin immediately following this request with the questions put by 3:15. 2, concurrence and third reading of Bill number 3 will begin at 3:15 with the questions to be put by 3:35 p.m. 3, concurrence and third reading of Bill 5 will begin at 3:35 p.m. with the questions to be put at 3:45 p.m. 4, concurrence and third reading of Bill 213 will begin at 3:45 p.m. with the questions to be put by 4:05 p.m. Concurrence and third reading of Bill 200 will begin at 4:05 p.m. with the questions to be put by 4:20 p.m. Royal assent of Bills 345, 200, and 213 will occur at 4:20 p.m. If any of this business concludes before the noted deadline time, the House may proceed to the next item on the list with the end times to remain the same.
Is there leave to schedule the following items of business today at the times noted, with the understanding that the Deputy Speaker or Chairperson will be empowered to interrupt debate if necessary to put the questions without further debate at these appointed times? 1. Committee of the Whole on Bill 200 will begin immediately following this request, with the questions to be put at 3:15. 2. Concurrence and third reading of Bill 3 will begin at 3:15, with the question to be put at 3:35. 3. Concurrence and third reading of Bill 5 will begin at 3:35, with the question to be put at 3:45. 4. Concurrence and third reading of Bill 213 will begin at 3:45, with the question to be put at 4:05. 5. Concurrence and third reading of Bill 200 will begin at 4:05, with the question to be put at 4:20. 6. Royal assent of Bills 3, 4, 5, 200, and 213 will occur at 4:20 p.m. If any of this business concludes before the noted deadline time, the House may proceed to the next item on the list, with the end times to remain the same. Is there leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Government House Leader on House Business.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to announce the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs will meet on Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 10 a.m. to consider the following: the annual report of elections in Manitoba for the year ending December 31st, 2021.
It has been announced by the Honourable Government House Leader that the Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs will meet on Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 10 a.m. to consider the annual report of elections in Manitoba for the year ending December 31st, 2021. You're done? Okay. I'm just going to get my papers in order here. As previously agreed, we will begin Committee of the Whole to consider Bill 200. Mr. Deputy Speaker, please take the chair.
Will the Committee of Whole please come to order? As announced, this committee will now consider the following: Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended. Does the sponsor of the bill, the Honourable Member for St. Vital, have an opening statement? The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you. I just want to make a brief statement to say I encourage all members who are going to be voting for the Black History Month bill to actually come to a Black History Month event this February. There's many events to participate in across the province, especially here in Winnipeg. And so I encourage all members and all those who are watching at home, participate in Black History Month. It's a wonderful time. Lots of events, lots of learning, lots of celebration. So come and celebrate Black History Month in February.
Right on. We thank the member for that statement. Do any other members wish to make an opening statement? Seeing none, during the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass? Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. Committee rise.
Sorry, actually, that concludes the business before the committee. What is the vote?
That concludes the business before the committee. The hour being 3:13. What is the will of the committee? Committee rise. Call in the speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lever-Andre.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Committee of the Whole has considered the following. Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended, and reports the same without amendment. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Swan River, that the report of the committee be received.
I need to indicate that the mover and seconder must be in their own chair.
The member for Seine River. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the report of the committee be received.
There we go. I should state, Jesus, my chance to get second, and here I go running around.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for La Vérendrye, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. As previously announced, we will now move to concurrence and third reading of Bill 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act name registration. The Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Finance, that Bill number 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration, reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred in and now read for a third time and passed.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Finance. Did I say member of... It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protections and Government Services, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Finance, that Bill number 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration, be reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm really pleased to stand here at third reading and talk about this, the Vital Statistics Act amendment, which will modernize the Vital Statistics Act to expand the parameters of name registration to include a wider range of characters and names in recognition of traditional Indigenous languages, as well as many other languages and cultures, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And this has been a request that we've been working on some time. It's very critical that we move this ahead so we can done quickly and move on to the next step, which is communicating with federal government and agencies that we know have to change how they accept, as well as other provinces, and looking back on how people can reclaim their traditional names. Of course, as you probably know, we follow common practice in our government, as opposed to previous governments that didn't go to Treasury Board in order to change fees to forgive going back to the traditional names. We have to go to Treasury Board, and once this act is passed, we will be able to take that step. Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you.
Are there any other speakers? The Honourable Member for Kiwatanuk.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the chance to share a few words on the Bill number 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act. And again, has been mentioned in previous opportunities to speak to this piece of legislation, is that is still incomplete. It is still not enough. The minister had shared that these attempts and this change to this act is going to be effective basically here in Manitoba, and that he is going to quote unquote reach out and advocate to the federal government to change their systems to also allow this to happen. And time again, we've asked that question, exactly how is that going to be? And specifically towards Indigenous communities, Indigenous people here in Manitoba, that primarily a lot of their identification is actually federal identification, whether it be their passport or whether it be this, their treaty status cards, which this legislation and this changes that are going to be made here will not allow that to happen here. So potentially there'll be a lot of confusion that will go on then to actually have them potentially have two pieces of identification with differentiating names, which will ultimately cause a lot more confusion. So we did call upon this government to make those changes and to say what that advocacy was going to be on a federal level, and we didn't hear any of that in this legislation. And don't get me wrong, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a start, but at the same time, we cannot always be at the starting stage of making positive changes towards Indigenous reconciliation here in Manitoba. We have to be able to see it through to the end result, and this piece of legislation does not do that, but it does do a start. So we are in support of this legislation for the intent that it is, but it is still not complete, and we did want to share those words on the record. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'm happy to rise and just have the opportunity to share a few more words on the record with respect to Bill 3. I want to take this opportunity to just remind the government of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 17 that would enable survivors and their families to reclaim names changed by the residential school system, as well as waiving administrative costs. And I think that this is an opportunity that the government does have to take in respect the calls for truth and reconciliation, and I hope that they do make these changes and ensure that it is part of the legislation and how it is in fact practiced. I also want to just encourage the government to work with Vital Stats Manitoba as much as possible to ensure that there aren't any backlogs and ensure that those who want to have access and to utilize this legislation and change their names, that they have the ability to do so. I know many people who may want to use this legislation may not have easy access, for example, to a phone line, or they might not have a permanent address. And we just want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can as provincial legislatures to ensure that anyone who perhaps has even in the past tried to change their names are made aware of this legislation, and that we're removing as many barriers as possible for that. And lastly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think it's just very important that those using this new change to Vital Statistics Manitoba understand that it is new legislation and there are some potential limitations, whether that be through technology or just other parts of the world having to catch up. We want to make sure people understand that, for example, if they change their name from having a first and a last name to just one name, that at this point in time they cannot have a valid passport. That was something that the minister shared with us, and we want to make sure that people are fully aware of the changes being made and of potential limitations, and that this government is working interjurisdictionally with other provinces and territories and even other parts of the world to make sure that these limitations and barriers are removed. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, the question before the House is concurrence and third reading of Bill 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. We will now move, as previously announced, to concurrence and third reading on Bill 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services, the Bill number 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended, reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Justice, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services, that Bill number 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended, reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Deputy Speaker, I spoke to the contents of this bill at second reading. There were questions that arose during the question and answer period. I answered them at committee last night. There were no presenters. So there's nothing further that I need to expound on third reading.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. As much as I'd like to add to the many words that have been put on the record with regards to this bill, I know we had a robust debate at second reading. I think I'll keep my comments short. I know we have important business that needs to be done today. I did have an opportunity to pop on and listen to committee last night. Appreciate that the minister has brought back some of that information, and appreciate that this is largely administrative, and so we look forward to seeing this pass and moving on to the rest of the business for the afternoon.
The Honourable Member for River Heights.
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this bill is pretty straightforward. As a result of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and the ascension to the throne of King Charles III, we need to make some changes, and we're able to make in this bill changes which also would allow these changes to be made without necessarily having legislation in the future. So we are in full agreement with this. I would say also very briefly that we are thankful to Queen Elizabeth II for her tremendous contribution over so many years, and we look forward to working with King Charles III, and his particular interest in the environment, I think, is very encouraging because it's an extraordinarily important topic for the planet at the moment. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing no further speakers, the question before the House is concurrence and third reading of Bill number 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. We will now move, as previously announced, to concurrence and third reading of Bill 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act. The Honourable Member for Fort White.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by Member for Radisson, that Bill 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act, reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred and now be read for a third time and passed.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for Fort White, seconded by the Honourable Member for Radisson, that Bill number 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act, reported from the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed. The Honourable Member for Fort White.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is an honor for me to rise today and have my first bill passed unanimously with the support of everyone in this House. I think that it shows that we can work together when we have to, and the animals thank us. I know all the animals throughout this House not the members sitting in here, but all the animals throughout Manitoba really thank us for this. This is a step, progressive step forward in protecting animals across Manitoba, and I look forward to bringing more bills forward to further protections of animals here in Manitoba. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I thank everyone for their support.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Wow, Mr. Deputy Speaker, getting it twice in 1 week to stand up and talk about animals. This is a real pleasure and real treat. I want to commend the member for Fort White. I think that this bill is an important one and certainly speaks to the importance of looking after pets and animals in our city and our province. And I think it really does help strengthen, again, we have some of these rules in place here in the city of Winnipeg, but expands that throughout the province, and I think that's a commendable goal. I also, while I have the opportunity, wanted to make sure that I shouted out my colleague from St. John's, who's been an absolute pioneer and leader with regards to animal welfare in our province, and I think she's done a great job of ensuring that this issue remains at the forefront. And I hear the member for Fort White talking about bipartisan support for this. I think it is a good model. I'm hoping that we can continue this model, and the next time we bring a great piece of legislation forward by the member for St. John's, maybe he won't listen to other voices in his caucus that say, it's got to be the orange team versus the blue team. Sometimes we're here for the pets and for the animals. So hopefully this will continue on this issue and others. I also would be remiss if I don't one more time thank Mr. Brady Oliveira for coming down to the legislature and most importantly allowing me to spend some time with his dogs. But in all seriousness, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the great work that he does for animals across our province, and I know that shows his commitment to our community, and he is just one of so many people, as I mentioned, even in my own constituency, folks who give so much of themselves to rescue animals and to put those pets first. It really is commendable, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and when we can, as legislators, stand behind those people in their work with animals, I think that's a very good step in the right direction. So, as I said, I hope this is just one step of many, and that we can continue to work on these kinds of issues and others in lockstep to make sure that we can get some things done for animal welfare in this province. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And again, I rise just to put a few more thoughts on the record here about Bill 213. And it is an excellent piece of legislation, and I really want to commend the member for Fort White for doing the amount of consultation in which he did and bringing to the Manitoba Legislature not only those he consulted with, but also a bunch of dogs, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It really did make for a fun and enjoyable morning here at the Ledge just yesterday, and it was a nice change of pace for once here in these chambers. So I want to thank the member for doing that. I'm excited to be able to work with the member and the department responsible for the Animal Protection Act actually on another piece of legislation protecting cats here in the province of Manitoba. And it's actually based off an idea that someone came and shared with me at McDonald's on Saturday, and I've already spoken with the member from Fort White about it a little bit, and we're hoping to be able to work together on this piece of legislation moving forward. And lastly, just to congratulate him, I believe this is his first piece of legislation, and that's always a very exciting time here in the chambers, and just say thank you to all of those who have been lobbying the government over the years, both past NDP and current Conservative government, and just all the work that you're doing to protect animals here in our province. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Are there any further speakers? Seeing none, the question before the House is concurrence and third reading of Bill 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. We will now move, as previously announced and agreed, to concurrence and third reading of Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks and Months Act amended. The honourable member for St. Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the member for Union Station, that Bill number 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended, reported from the Committee of the Whole, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed.
It has been moved by the honourable member for St. Vital, seconded by the honourable member for Union Station, that Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended, reported from the Committee of the Whole, be concurred in and be now read for a third time and passed. The honourable member for St. Vital.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm happy that we've reached this stage of the bill. I'm excited that many members have showed support for this piece of legislation that will recognize officially February as Black History Month in Manitoba. And I think that as a sign that it's going to be a unanimous vote, I sure hope it is, that it shows that Black history is more than just people for the Black community. It's really all of our history is Black history, and Black history is part of our entire Canadian history. And I think that's one of the points of Black history, is to make that acknowledgement, that the importance of Black history as part of everything that happens in Canada. So we're very happy to bring this forward, to have it supported, to now acknowledge and lift up the people who've been doing the work, the heavy lifting over many decades, to make sure Manitobans know about Black history, hopefully open up more doors for this history to be told to more Manitobans. And that will, Mr. Deputy Speaker, be our goal, to ensure that future generations are enlightened and empowered by what we do here today, in the knowledge that all of us are supporting Black history here in Manitoba. So thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Fort White.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I rise with a tremendous amount of honor to support this bill. As I spoke this morning earlier, as a person of a visible minority, that supporting bills like this is important, but it's also that everyone around here supported this bill. And what I would say, I mean, I'm new here, but I thought my bill being passed in 4 days, from Monday to today, Bill 213, is actually trumped by the member from St. Vital with his being bill passed today. And it just shows the power of what we can do when we work together to accomplish such great bills and progressive thinking and forward movements to bring Manitoba together. So I'm really honored that I was able to support this and stand and say a few words on the record. The recognition of this month further takes steps towards equality. And that's what we're all here working towards. When our kids are out there, when our community members are out there, and they see people from all backgrounds, all faiths, sexual orientations, that we are working towards equality, and this Legislative Assembly is representative of that. Black History Month gives Manitobans an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate further generations about the contributions of Black people and people of African descent to Manitoba's economic, social, political, and cultural life. So it's with a tremendous amount of honor that I'm happy this bill is being passed. Congratulations to the member from St. Vital, and thank you for your time, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to support this legislation and thank the member for bringing this forward. It is time that we do this. Black History Month has long been a month of celebration and awareness here in Manitoba, which there are many events organized by the Black community and in support of the Black community. We have an increasing population of people who are Black in Manitoba, with many new immigrants who've come from various countries in Africa in particular, but certainly not exclusively from Africa, from the Caribbean, and indeed many people who've come from other countries on the way. Here, Willard Reeves was a long time history of being in the United States, and he came here more recently as an example. So it is fitting that we do this, and it's going to be an important contribution to Manitoba and to Manitobans in the years ahead to have this recognized as Black History Month and to be able to celebrate the achievements of individuals in the Black community who've contributed so much to our province. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? I'm sorry. The honourable member for Union Station.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful for another opportunity to put some words on the record in regards to this bill. Again, I'm proud to have seconded this bill, and I'm really proud of my colleague, the MLA for St. Vital, for bringing this bill forward. It's really important that wherever we can formally, by way of law, recognize a month like Black History Month, I think that it's important that we do so. And I'll share a little bit about my own background. So I'm a Many people know I'm a first-generation Canadian. I'm a Nigerian person. I'm Igbo, more specifically. That's the tribe that I belong to and that my people belong to. And being a first-gen Canadian, growing up here in Winnipeg, in a community at the time, back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, which was predominantly white at that time, St. Norbert, very diverse now, but back when I was growing up, not so much. My parents worked really, really hard as newcomers, as immigrants, to organize within Black communities, within the African community, within the Nigerian community, to make sure that their kids and other people's kids felt really proud to be Black and proud to be African. And it is the efforts of our elders, it is the efforts of people who have come before us that have given folks like myself and like my colleague, the MLA for St. Patel, to be able to be in this House, to be a member of this esteemed place, and bring forward legislation that really uplifts and celebrates the efforts of our elders, that celebrates the efforts of those that came before us and paved the way for us to even be members in this chamber. Earlier today, when I had a moment to speak on the importance of this bill, I mentioned really briefly the importance of recognizing Black youth. And I want to reiterate those words again. Black youth across our province and across our country are doing incredible things to celebrate and amplify the Black community and are advancing us in a way that reimagines what the futures of Black people in Canada and in Manitoba and the prairies can look like. And I think that's really important. Not only is Black History Month about celebrating the past and how far we've come and making sure that we have a written discourse around history that is accurate, because so much of the history we learn here, unfortunately, is history that has erased the contributions of Black communities. It's important that we are writing a narrative and sharing stories that accurately reflect the contributions of Black people, but that we also recognize that the youth have a vision for their own futures, for the futures of Black people across the prairies, across our country and globally, that needs to be heard and deserves to be supported. And so I want to highlight incredible youth. I think about the youth, for example, who organized the Justice for Black Lives rally, the biggest rally surrounding Black rights and injustices against Black communities and the injustices of violence perpetrated against Black communities by the police and by the state. That rally was organized by Black youth. It was led by queer Black youth, by Black mothers, by Black folks who so often lead our movements. And so to those folks and to the young people who are visioning and reimagining what Black futures and quite frankly, the future for all of us can and should look like here in Manitoba, I thank you and we celebrate you. And that's what my colleague's bill is really all about. It's also about lifting up folks who are thinking about Black futures. And I want to be clear that the language of Black futures is language that was genesised from Black artists, which I think is a really important thing we don't talk about enough. That art and artists are in and of themselves activists, and they are the folks who, through their creative talents, really illustrate for us the opportunities that exist to create the world that we want to see. And so I want to thank Black artists and creatives who do a ton of heavy lifting and who, many of which are activists within their art, within their whatever their respective talents are and their focuses are. We have to make sure that we recognize artists as revolutionaries. And there are folks like Cyrus Marcus Ware that I think of, Rodney Diverlis. I think of, many folks come to mind who we need to celebrate. I think of also, Black politicians that we need to highlight, like Andrea Jenkins and other folks who have paved the way for us. And I want to make sure that when we have this conversation about Black History Month, that we talk about the diversity that exists within Black communities, which is why I do think it is fundamentally important to talk about the creatives that quite literally sometimes illustrate the possibilities for us that exist for all Manitobans in respect of Black communities. Here in Manitoba, we have some pretty well-known and renowned artists. I think of one, Yisa, who's a Nigerian artist. Absolutely incredible, recently established alongside other folks, a Canadian Artists Initiative that highlights Canadian Black artists across the country, an effort that launched at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. And Yisa's work is internationally renowned, but this particular effort, where he was able to also highlight many other local artists, speaks to the value that Black creatives hold in our communities. And something that my colleague, the MLA for St. Vital, and I have discussed, and other folks, is that it's one thing to have this law passed, but we need to make sure that we are advocating for there to be intentional efforts made at the government level to support the very diverse and dynamic Black communities here in Manitoba. We need to make sure that as legislators, we are doing our part to ensure that Black organizations, that Black initiatives, be them formal like nonprofits and charities, or maybe be them informal if that's the needs of the communities like collectives, et cetera, are being met, that their voices are being heard. And for too long in Manitoba, Black communities, organizations, and initiatives have gone without equitable access to funding. They've gone without equitable access to resources and relationships, which would see their efforts really be able to be maximized to the benefit of all Manitobans. Now, we've highlighted organizations like Black History Month Manitoba. They are outstanding. Those folks have done so much for our communities. Again, quite frankly, without the resources they deserve. And so with this bill in mind, I sincerely hope that all of us take it upon ourselves to advocate so that Black communities also see equity in all spaces, all places, and that we're advocating on behalf and alongside those who have quite frankly helped advance human rights in Manitoba to the benefit of everybody. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Burroughs.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's an honor to stand today and speak about Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended. First of all, I want to say thank you to my colleague, member from St. Vital, for bringing this bill forward. It's very important for us to embrace diversity.
Order, please. Just going to ask if the numerous conversations could be a little quieter if possible. One or two is perhaps a little quieter than multiple ones. So if members could bear that in mind so that the member for Burroughs can speak clearly and I can hear as well. The honourable member for Burroughs.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I was talking about diversity, and which I'm very proud of, and being the first turbaned member in this legislature, I feel how it feels like representing the minorities. And I'm very happy to see people of color in this chamber. And when we talk about particularly this bill, the Black History Month Act, I'm so happy to see 3 members representing all other Manitobans, including the people from the Black communities and African communities. But sometimes I wonder that why it took so long for these discussions and debates and these words to be heard in this chamber. Why didn't this happen 20 years back? Why didn't we hear about the Black History Month Act 10 years back? We had to wait for somebody from that community to get elected and sit in this chamber think about what's the right thing to do, and then bring in this legislation. But it's never too late. I'm happy that all the elected representatives in this chamber, they are in favor of this act, this bill, and we are working together to embrace that diversity. Still, we need to think that there is a lot that is unknown about the ethnic communities. Sometimes we share things within our own community. Sometimes we fail to bridge the gaps. I mean to say the communication gaps between various ethnic groups. So it's very important when we discuss about this particular bill today here that all of us should make efforts to know more about the contributions, the sacrifices, and the hard work that Black Manitobans have done to build our province and to build our beautiful country, Canada. During the process, I'm pretty sure that this member has worked with so many organizations that all the members don't know about, are not aware about. So I would think that we must make connections. We must identify the organizations that represent the African communities and connect with them to know much more about the subject. I can also proudly say that we all work together to bring in other such bills and support them to become the law. For example, Filipino Heritage Month. I represent so many members, so many constituents whose roots connect to Filipino heritage. Similarly, Hindu and Sikh heritage. So those are the people I represent in this chamber. So it's always good to work together. It's always good to respect this diversity, and it's always good to talk about various ethnic groups. Because why it's important is that there are so many prejudices about the people who don't look like us. Because of the lack of knowledge, because of the lack of awareness about those religions, about those cultures, about what they wear, about how they talk, about what their language is. So we should be knowing each other better at formal platforms and informal platforms, because this country, this province, is known for its diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we feel so good about it, because this nature is diverse. I have said this in my remarks in the past in this chamber, that just imagine a garden with flowers of single color. It won't even look like a garden. So the nature is diverse. There are different colors, different religions, different ethnicities. So I would conclude here that I'm so happy to speak about this bill and happy that it's going to be a law soon. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of, sorry, let me ask a few other ones. Are there any other speakers? Is the House ready for the question? The question before the House is concurrence and third reading of Bill 200, the Black History Month Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and so ordered. I declare the motion carried. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I believe the House is ready to prepare for royal assent.
Okay. I am advised that Her Honour the Lieutenant Governor is about to arrive to grant royal assent to the bills. So I am therefore interrupting the proceedings of the House for the royal assent.
This desk has to.
Yeah, I'll just put my stuff.
Phil? We're ready, Phil?
Her Honor, the Lieutenant Governor.
Your Honor, at this sitting, the Legislative Assembly has passed certain bills that I ask Your Honor to give assent to.
Number 3, the Vital Statistics Amendment Act, name registration. Loi modifiant la loi sur les statistiques de l'état civil, forme du nom. Number 4, the Minimum Wage Adjustment Act 2022, Employment Standards Code amended. Loi de 2022 sur le rajustement du salaire minimum, modification du Code des normes d'emploi. Number 5, the Demise of the Crown Act, various acts amended. Loi sur la dévolution de la couronne, modification de diverses lois. Number 200, the Black History Month Act, commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act amended. Loi sur le mois de l'histoire des Noirs, modification de la loi sur les journées, les semaines et les mois commémoratifs. Number 213, the Animal Care Amendment Act, loi modifiant la loi sur le soin des animaux.
In Her Majesty's name, Her Honor assents to these bills.
Please be seated. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a point of order.
This being the last sitting day before the holiday season, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday, a safe holiday with their families, to thank the clerks, the Hansard staff, the Sergeant-at-Arms, and the Legislative Building Security, as well as the legislative pages and clerks, as well as yourself for your hard work this session. And I would be remiss if I did not thank our wonderful House Leader for all of her work shepherding us through. And since we are in the spirit of giving, why not also thank the Government House Leader as well? Merry Christmas.
On the same point of order, the Honourable First Minister.
On the same point of order, I'm not sure that it is a point of order, but it is a point, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the point that we want to say is Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone as well. We wish you all the best and all your families the very best in this holiday season. I also want to extend that to all of their clerks and table staff, to our pages, to Hansard, to everyone that helps, translation services, to everyone that helps us on a daily basis. Throughout session and beyond that in the Manitoba Legislature. And to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And we also just want to pass on our very best to Madam Speaker as well. And we look forward to seeing her soon as well. And also to the Liberal members of the Chamber as well. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all.
On the same point of order?
Same point of order.
The Honourable Member for St. Boniface.
I could pull a Frank Costanza and have an airing of grievances for Festivus, but I won't. I'll say thank you very much. Instead, I'll put a litany of gratitude and congratulations and best wishes for everybody for a safe and a healthy holiday season, and to have some really wonderful time with your family and friends over the next few weeks. So thank you so very much. Merci.
Probably everybody knows it's not a point of order, but it is a good point to make. And I wish to take this opportunity, other than to remind everyone to empty their desks, to say a sincere thank you to the clerks. The whole team have been very gracious to me as I've found myself in this role these last few weeks. And to thank all members as well. I know that you've had to bear with my rookie errors and mistakes here and there. I do say sincerely thank you. And wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and trust we will all be back here safely in due time.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Singing. Can you canvass the House to see if it's the will of members to call at 5 p.m., Mr. Deputy Speaker?
Is it the will of members to call at 5 p.m.? The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until the call of the Speaker, I believe. That's it. Call in at the call of the Speaker. Merry Christmas, everybody. Empty your desks. Have a wonderful holiday, and see you all next year, if not before.